This is a land of 3 races and 3 civilizations: Spanish, Indian, and African. The 3 racial strands that have been woven into the fabric of Colombia, a country of 25 million people. Colombia is at the extreme north end of South America, at the point where it is joined to North America by the Isthmus of Panama. This is also the story of 3 places: Cartagena on the North Caribbean coast, Armero, a small town in the center of the country, and Bogota, the capital city. They reveal how varied the fabric of Colombia is when we examine it in detail.
This is the city of Bogota, Colombia, cocaine capital of the world. Here, much of the coca paste from the south is turned into white cocaine crystals to be smuggled north. 60% of the cocaine consumed in the United States is refined in or passes through Colombia.
To the newspaper reader, Colombia is the world center for marijuana and cocaine. In the last year, these drugs are said to have brought in more than the coffee crop. The problem of stamping out the drug trade is exacerbated by the country's poverty. Bogota is famous for its street urchins who work in gangs and who will steal the watch off your wrist, the glasses off your face, and knife people to get a few pennies. Colombia's stability ultimately rests on force. The army stands by to keep the ruling classes in power. This in turn provokes opposition. For years, there have been guerrilla movements in Colombia which claim to be the only radical alternative.
Diplomats who were wounded during the takeover of the Dominican embassy were finally allowed to leave yesterday. They were injured during the intense fighting between the leftist terrorists and Colombian soldiers and police. Well-armed soldiers surround the embassy, but there has been no more shooting. Meanwhile, army officers closely watch the embassy. They talk to the terrorists by walkie-talkie, trying to convince them to give up.
The camera which records a news story like this doesn't lie, but it does fail to include the whole truth. It is possible to spend a few weeks in Colombia without being knifed, mugged, drugged, or kidnapped. This is the view of Colombia that's familiar all over the world: guerrillas, hostages, police, soldiers, and poverty. But if the newsreels are only half true, how can one begin to understand what they have failed to say?
Abre la boquita, abre la boca, abre la boca.
Dr. Manuel Zapata Olivella is as qualified as anyone to answer such a question.
¿Cuántos años tiene la nena?
3 años.
3 años.
Dr. Zapata has only dedicated part of his time to medicine. He's also an anthropologist. For some years, he's been working on a comprehensive survey of the Colombian people and their way of life.
Entonces, le da estas medicinas, ¿no? Son 3 al día. Tome.
Here in a back street in one of the suburbs of Bogota is the modest home of the Colombian Foundation for the Study of Folklore, run by Manuel Zapata. Dr. Zapata is listening with his sister Delia to music they recorded on the Pacific coast. The foundation has gathered together information about the history, traditions, and popular art forms of the many regions of Colombia. The archives show in detail how the 3 main races in the country, Indian, African, and Spanish, have blended together to form a new race and a new culture. The slides from the library show the Colombian racial mixture in all its forms. Blacks from the northern Caribbean coast. Their neighbors, the Arawak Indians. A family of mestizos, people of mixed Spanish and Indian descent. Mestizos with a Spanish fighting cock. Daisy, a student here, is also a mestiza. A slide which records the survival of Indian crafts, like pottery.
As an anthropologist, I am part of what I study. My own ancestry is African, Indian, and Spanish. But in Colombia, the races appear in so many different combinations that neither I nor anybody else can appear as a representative of all of Colombia.
This at least represents part of it. La Boquilla is near the town of Cartagena on the north coast and to Manuel Zapata's own roots. La Boquilla is a fishing village. Every year they hold a festival which goes on for 4 days and nights. The people here are sociable and generous. They don't have much. They don't need much to enjoy themselves. Some rum, some sunshine, and the beach. The ancestors of these people arrived from Africa as slaves. Many of the slaves were employed building the walls of Cartagena, which in its early days was the most important town in the whole of South America. Cartagena was attacked by the French and English from the 1550s on. Drake took it some years later. For protection, the Spaniards designed this wall, 40 feet high, 50 feet thick, several miles long, entirely surrounding the city. In the 17th and 18th centuries, the town these walls were built to protect was the main port for the slave trade in the Americas. After a 2-month journey in the holds of evil-smelling ships, they were offloaded at Cartagena. Here they were branded with a royal seal to show that customs duty had been paid. Then they were sent to market. Some were sold to work the gold mines or cultivate the land. Female slaves were kept as concubines by the Spanish. Some of the slaves ran away and formed their own black communities out in the wilds. Some mixed with the Indians. But slave women and their Spanish masters are the ancestors of most of the people in northern Colombia today. Among them, Manuel Zapata and his relatives. An aunt, cousins, and a brother-in-law have joined Manuel, his sister Delia, and his brother Virgilio for a family portrait on film.
La abuela Coti, que era mi tatarabuela, tenía una marca en la nalga, como se acostumbraba a marcar a los esclavos. Después de ella, que ya alcanzó a ser libertada con la libertad de los esclavos, todos los que hemos descendido de ese tronco hemos sido libres desde el punto de vista de no tener amos.
Así es.
Y esto en gran parte se refleja en esta familia que tenemos acá, porque la familia esclava, mientras estuvo cerrada bajo el dominio del amo, no podía los esclavos casarse con la libertad con que posteriormente podían casarse. Y esto ha dado oportunidad de que la familia pues hubiese mezclado con indios, con indias, con blancos, con mulatos, con mestizos, ¿no?
Así es que hay de todo en la raza.
Dime una cosa, aparte de la abuela era india o era negra o era zamba o era mulata?
No, india. Ella era hermana de Dionisio Vera, porque ella apellido Vera, mi abuela. Y todos los Veras son indios. Que mi abuela era más bien india.
En esa época ya la abuela todavía bailaba. ¿Tú tuviste la oportunidad de verla bailar?
Bueno, más bien poco. Una vez que bajaron unos gaiteros y estaban en este sector, precisamente aquí por la calle del Espíritu Santo, sí. Y se acercaron y entraron al rancho donde ella vivía, que es donde teníamos nosotros la casita.
Bueno, para mí siempre ha sido un misterio esto de que tú hayas salido bailarina, ¿no? No misterio en el sentido de que no lo puedas hacer porque eso del baile lo llevamos nosotros en la sangre.
Delia Zapata is famous in Colombia as a choreographer and dancer. She learned about music and dancing as a child in the street festivals of Cartagena. All over the country, people have taken to dancing to this kind of music. And now you can't have a party anywhere in Colombia without music from the coast. If the festival in La Boquilla records the coast of Africa, then Cartagena itself bears the stamp of Spain. The cathedral and churches are as Spanish as Seville. Founded in 1533, Cartagena has a sense of age, which is rare in the Americas, north or south. It's a beautiful town, a monument to Spanish civilization and to Spanish orthodoxy. This was once the headquarters of the Inquisition. That church recalls a Spaniard who all Colombians remember with respect and affection. San Pedro Claver defended the slaves against the cruelties of their masters. He was known as the slave of the slaves. He dedicated his life to converting them to the Christian faith. In 1980, the 400th anniversary of San Pedro's birth was celebrated all over Colombia, but especially in Cartagena. The Pope chose as his personal representative a cardinal from Africa, Bernardin Gontin from Dahomey. The cardinal was taken on a visit to the house where Claver once lived.
C'est Misaël. Angel. C'est Ophélia. C'est la porterie. C'est une amie.
Cardinal Gontin also visited the room where Claver died in 1654, a room with a view of the slave ships anchored in the harbor. After the cardinal's visit, Manuel Zapata, a non-Catholic, went to San Pedro Claver's home. He has a deep admiration for Claver, but he couldn't help reflecting that Colombia still did not have a black cardinal of its own to preside over the celebrations. Manuel Zapata had some more thoughts, which he later discussed with his younger brother Juan, a devout Catholic, a politician, and a spokesman for the black community in Colombia.
¿Tú crees que debido a esa labor de evangelización de Claver, de identidad de todas las razas, se le han abierto los marcos a los negros en este país para permitir, como sucede, de que, digamos por caso mi sobrina sea médica, de que Ariel sea antropólogo? ¿Tú crees que en algo ha influido esa labor de San Pedro Claver?
Bueno, la primera respuesta es que ellos no son 100% negros ya. Entonces, en este país, las personas que entran ya en un mestizaje, se les da una mayor consideración. Pero el problema de Claver yo lo vería si me hicieras tú la pregunta en relación con gente 100% negra, si tienen esa oportunidad del mismo chance de las universidades. Yo en ese caso diría que les ponen mucho más resistencia. Ellos han logrado la universidad porque yo diría que están ya más lavados, no producen ante la gente ese estado del negro, de rechazo, de un rechazo que pudiéramos llamar subjetivo.
Pero tú sabes que hay negros verdaderamente puros aquí que han ido a la universidad y han obtenido también los títulos académicos.
Porque esos casos que tú me presentas a universidades, se dice que una golondrina no hace verano. Aquí hay centenares y millares de negros y se pueden contar todavía en esta época con los dedos en la mano esas gentes que ya, bueno, ya pasan de centenares, pero es que el país es muy grande y ellos son muchos, que han llegado a la universidad con mucha dificultad. Pero sí creo que Claver que es la pregunta importante, es uno de los que ha dado origen a estas posibilidades.
As a politician and former candidate for the Colombian presidency, Juan Zapata recently wrote an article reminding Colombians that the sufferings of the blacks are not over. In the shadow of the wall their ancestors built, these blacks form the poorest section of the community. Juan Zapata has demanded that the blacks too should have a fair share of the wealth Cartagena earns from the thousands of tourists who come here every year. Cartagena was the birthplace of Colombia as a nation, the first town to declare its independence from Spain in the early 19th century. In 1851, the last slaves too got their freedom. It's not surprising that when Manuel Zapata began to write an historical novel about the blacks in Latin America, he drew on his experience here. He often returns for inspiration. This is where his roots are, and his novel, now almost finished, attempts to do for the blacks of Latin America what Arthur Haley tried to do in his novel Roots for the blacks of the United States, to document the past, and by doing so, to exorcise it.
Dime una cosa, ¿y tú dónde vives? Vivo en Zaragozilla, pero tú eres de aquí de Cartagena.
Someone asked Manuel Zapata, "Why do you write about people who aren't able to read your work?" He said, "I write for those very people who are unable to speak for themselves." Zapata's own literary mentor is the Colombian poet Jorge Artel. One of Artel's poems expresses feelings they both have in common. "I've been black for many centuries. Poet of my race, I inherited its pain, and the emotion I express is pure, the hoarse shout, the one-rhythm drum. The deep trembling murmur in the throat of my ancestors is my voice. The human suffering I praise is not a costume jewel for tourists. The pain I sing about is not for export." In the early 16th century, the Spanish conquistadors gained their first foothold on the Colombian coast. Then they moved inland in search of gold. With mountains and jungles barring their way, they often traveled by river. The Carib Indians who lived on the coast were also conquerors. They too had moved inland, centuries before the Spaniards. When they defeated an enemy, they killed the men and took the women. The Spaniards used the same methods against the Caribs themselves. From the 16th century on, a mixed race was created, a race which began with the children of Spaniards and Indian women, a race of mestizos. Two cultures merged. Over the years, a new tradition was created. Most of the people in Colombia today are mestizos and live in the mountains and valleys of the west and north. The small town of Armero is in the central Andean range. Here we can see how a new culture developed in the course of 400 years. Misael Devia is a product of that new culture, but he's also a student of it. Self-educated, he's spent all his life researching local customs and in struggling to preserve them against the industrial civilization that threatens to wipe them out.
Bueno, yo soy mestizo, mezcla de la sangre española, nuestros conquistadores, y tal vez una gran parte, algo más de la mitad, de sangre india perteneciente a la raza caribe, en los pijaos, que fueron los que llegaron aquí al Tolima. Cuando los españoles llegaron, ellos sufrieron mucho para domar a estos indios muy belicosos, muy bravos, no se dejaban domar. Y tuvieron tantas calamidades que apodaron esta región el Valle de las Tristezas, y pertenece al departamento del Tolima, de la cual soy yo uno de las razas mestizas más auténticas de nuestra región.
The corn dance was once performed by the Indians. Now Don Misael has attempted to recreate it. The young man plays the part of a magician. The girls make an offering to help the corn grow. Unlike most of Colombia's folklore, this dance isn't part of a live tradition. It's a museum piece. In other parts of Colombia, there are still Indians who live out in the wilds as they did when this 19th century artist painted them. But even in Armero, there are still Indian traditions to be found if you look for them. Pottery is one. Doña Isabel is now the only potter in the district. She makes her living from the pots she sells. The Carib Indians who once lived here were potters too, although their civilization was not as developed as that of other Indian tribes in Colombia. Don Misael has lamented the decline of rustic crafts like this in passages that owe something to his taste for the eclogues of Virgil. His detailed knowledge has also been a help to Manuel Zapata.
Misael, ¿tú crees que esta cerámica tenga origen caribe?
Pues yo no creo mucho en la laboriosidad y en la industria de mis antepasados, los pijaos. Pero yo sí creo que ellos trajeron la arcilla en algunos artefactos toscos que luego perfeccionaron con los adelantos de España, de los conquistadores.
This 19th century print shows a country home built in a style that's become a rarity in Colombia. But here is a village that can hardly have changed over the last 250 years. That Indian wall nearby is even older. It was there when the Spaniards first arrived. The village of El Chorrillo is an hour away from Armero along a bumpy track. This is the rural Colombia Don Misael loves, and whose gradual disappearance fills him with dismay. When they hold a festival here, it's like it was in the old days.
Mi señora. ¿Cómo está?
Muchas gracias. ¿Qué tal la fiesta ayer de San Pedro? ¿Dieron bueno?
Bastante.
Se comió gallina, marrano y de todo.
Trago.
Aguardiente, cerveza, bailón. parrandió todo exquisito.
Pero aquí no hay como las fiestas de San Roque, eso sí es lo
Ah, no,
mejor.
sí, la fiesta de San Roque es lo más popular porque como es lo más patronal que hay aquí, es la fiesta de nosotros, los de la vereda. Pues entonces
oiga, Celestino, y usted más o menos, ¿cuánto cree que están celebrando aquí en el Chorrillo la fiesta de San Roque?
Pues hombre, yo creo que de acuerdo con el conocimiento mío y la edad mía, creo que eso va a ser por ahí como unos 250 años. Porque esta es una vereda como histórica, ¿no? Es de las más principales que tiene el municipio de Ambalema y a la actualidad, pues la casa que hay ahí es una casa hecha por los españoles.
Sí, es española.
Entonces, cuando se hizo esa casa ya era vereda.
Yo he tenido siempre predilección costumbrista por conocer algo de mis razas nativas y de mis razas de nuestros conquistadores. Y he estado explorando, siempre investigando, y vine a dar aquí a esta población en donde conocí la iniciación de las danzas de la señorita Inés. Entonces con ella nosotros fuimos, investigamos, y las danzas, por lo menos la danza de la caña y la danza de los monos, son danzas de nuestro mestizaje, de nuestro criollismo, y son auténticas, investigadas auténticamente todos sus pasos, en donde llevan parte de creencias indias y parte de del folclore de las tradiciones hispanas.
The dancers, like Don Misael, are mestizos. Their movements and the song they dance to are inspired by work on the land, in the sugarcane harvest. The songs of Colombia's interior are more thoughtful than the ones from the coast. They have more to say about a wider range of emotions, about everyday life. The molasses from the sugarcane ends up in the market as blocks of raw sugar. The sugar is dissolved in hot water and is a staple of the local diet. Armero is in the province of Tolima. People take pride in being from Tolima, though on the whole, Colombians are without the crude nationalism which disfigures some other countries in Latin America. The song affirms simply, I am from Tolima. The height above sea level determines the crop. Up in the hills, they grow cocoa and the coffee on which the legal part of Colombia's economy is based. After the husk has been removed, the beans are spread out to dry. This farm up in the hills and another down in the valley are owned by Don Angel Martinez. Don Angel is now a wealthy man, but he wasn't born rich. In his attitude to life, Don Angel has a strong affinity with his Spanish ancestors, who brought the horse to Colombia and whose skill as riders helped them to defeat the Indians.
Mi familia, por los Martínez, español. Por los Cáceres, se llama un poco de ancestro indio. A Dios gracias.
Cattle ranching in the heat of the tropics is different to ranching farther south on the Pampas. It's gentler here, and the prize Brahmin cattle are gentler too.
Los caballos me han dominado a mí toda la vida. Para mí el caballo ha sido uno de los mejores amigos que he tenido en la vida. El caballo de paso se llama caballo de paso colombiano, porque ese caballo estuvo hasta hace poco única y exclusivamente en Colombia. Nosotros le llamábamos caballo de paso castellano, pero luego al ver que no había sino en Colombia se resolvió decirle caballo de paso colombiano. De modo pues que el caballo de paso colombiano es un animal sumamente hermoso por la agilidad de sus patas, ese ritmo de patas y manos y la posición de su cola, ese ojo tan vivo y esas narices abiertas que le da mucha respiración a su pulmón. Es un caballo sumamente fuerte. De modo pues que el caballo de paso es admirado en todas partes del mundo. Usted monta un caballo de paso y pasa un automóvil, un Mercedes-Benz y toda la gente se dedica a mirar el caballo porque es más elegante el caballo que un Mercedes-Benz.
Only a few miles up the valley from Armero is a town which used to be one of the most important in Colombia. Mariquita is a few hundred feet higher than Armero. Its relative coolness made it popular with colonial society. Now the 16th century church overlooks a town that's peaceful because it's been largely forgotten. On the main square, another colonial church recalls the greatest conquistador of Colombia, and the only one who was a scholar as well as a soldier. He died here in Mariquita. Below the church tower is his tomb. Jiménez de Quesada, the founder of Bogotá. This is the place Quesada named Santa Fe de Bogotá and claimed for the Spanish crown. And near the house where Quesada once stayed, a church marks the spot where a mass was held to celebrate the foundation. This part of Bogota, known as La Candelaria, is still very much the way it's always been. Beyond are the tower blocks of the modern city. Ringed by mountains, Bogota is set on a plateau 8,000 feet up in the Tierra Fria, the cold country. Since the beginning, Bogota has dominated the area around it. Though before the days of air travel, it can't have been an easy place to reach. And now the presidential palace, whose renovations have yet to be completed, is here. This is where the power lies. And this is where the powerful enjoy the delights of the opera season. On another street in La Candelaria, Colombia's Spanish heritage is preserved by a guitar maker with an Indian face. He learned his craft from his grandfather, who in turn learned his from a Spaniard. To the conscious mind, Spain may have become a distant memory, but Colombia's roots are Spanish, and they are visible in the warmth and closeness of family life, in the religion of the people, in their manners, bureaucracy, crafts, habits, and language. They speak a more correct Spanish here than anywhere else in the Americas, and Spain is recalled in this music by a Colombian composer. Manuel Zapata, who identifies most strongly with the African part of his heritage, has a Spanish wife, Rosa, and some of his cousins, the Olivellas, have a Spanish look about them.
¿Tú crees que tú eres el más parecido al tío Gabriel?
Más bien acá del lado
De los Burgos.
No, en cuanto al físico, que él se
Pero-
refiere.
Ah, en cuanto al físico.
Sí.
Sí, de ella.
Olivella, ¿por qué crees tú que eres más parecido a los Olivella?
Por el físico.
Pero di, por los ojos, por la nariz,
el color
por...
de los ojos, la nariz.
¿Tú crees, Rosa, ya que nos conocimos nosotros en Cataluña y que tú eres catalana, ese apellido Olivella, ¿tú crees que sea italiano, que sea portugués o que sea precisamente catalán?
Pues yo diría que es catalán, por lo menos en Cataluña la palabra olivella significa árbol del olivo y es un apellido muy común a todos los niveles y en todas las regiones y hay muchos olivellas. A mí me sorprendió mucho cuando los encontré aquí. Nosotros lo tenemos como un nombre catalán, no sé si los haya también en Portugal, pero en Cataluña hay muchísimos.
Bien, entonces a mí me gustaría, Delia, que tú me dijeras si mamá, en su fisonomía, tenía los rasgos que tienen acá los primos, y tú descubres en ellos la misma fisonomía de mamá.
Bueno, ella tiene ciertos rasgos, sí, porque ella también tenía mucho de indígena en muchos aspectos de su fisonomía, tenía la influencia indígena.
Sí, pero estamos hablando de la influencia blanca.
De la influencia blanca, sí, tenía la conformación de la cara y la boca y todo, era olivella. Sí.
Dime una cosa, ¿tú te acuerdas de cómo era el cabello de mamá?
Ah, era negro, largo, ella la cabellera le llegaba hasta aquí. Si yo era quien se lo peinaba siempre, abundante, muy largo, lacio.
3 generations of Manuel Zapata's family. Juliana, his granddaughter, has a distinctly Indian look about her. The Indian tribe who lived in the Bogota region when the Spaniards first arrived were the Chibchas. You can see the Chibcha look in most of the faces. You can also find Chibcha habits if you search for them. Chia was the Chibcha goddess of the moon. And it's on Monday, Moon Day, that today's Bogotanos visit the cemetery to talk to their dead ones as their ancestors once did. In a country where the races and traditions are so mixed, one can see the truth of Manuel Zapata's statement that no one person could claim to represent all of Colombia. But this is what Manuel's sister Delia has aimed to do with her group of dancers. Just as Manuel has made use of his research as an anthropologist in his novels, so Delia has used the same material for her work as a choreographer. She's taken folk dances from all over Colombia and adapted them for the stage. The gaitas dance is from the north coast. The beat is African, but the costumes are Spanish, and the clarinet recalls an Indian flute. The stage performance is based on a passage from Manuel Zapata's new novel where he describes a secret carnival, a cabildo, held by Negro slaves wearing their master's clothes. The spectators are the carnival king and queen and their attendants. The performance includes a dance the Carib Indians used to celebrate their wars and victories. contradanza was originally from Spain, but now it's become Colombian. The need to find unity among such racial diversity has given a powerful impetus to the music and dance of Colombia. The vitality Colombia derives from its mixture of races can be seen in a street dance, the fandango.